All right. All right. We're ready. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Persuasion by the Pint. I'm Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool.
Dang it. We're
Let's see, we're live.
okay. Now we're live. We were frozen there for a second.
Oh.
All right. Let's try this one more time.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Persuasion by the Pint. I am Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool. Still here.
Still here.
Yes.
And judging from the title that we have from Sean, straight from Sean, I'm guessing I have a good idea what our episode's going to be about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we kind of talked about it on text a little bit. So yeah,
Yep.
It's the episode most likely to be banned from existence. Like if we're going to get banned for an episode pulled down from the powers that be, whether it be in Cupertino or wherever Spotify is or wherever all these other places are, this would be the show.
That would be it. This would be.
We're going to be talking today about persuasion secrets of a very well-known person, but not a very well-loved or liked person. At least not today.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I mean that
he's got a bad rap for good reason.
Yeah, for good reason. And we want to make that clear up front. Yeah, some of you might have heard of this guy. His initials are AH. He's a German dude from about the middle of the last century. So, yeah, we'll be talking about the persuasion secrets of Adolf Hitler today on the show. So, yeah,
on a little heavy. Note, my brother every Valentine's Day sends out a meme that says, because he's in his mid-30s and he doesn't have a girlfriend, so he sends out a meme that says, "Even Hitler had a girlfriend. You are literally worse than Hitler."
Wow.
So
yeah, so we'll try to not
a little self-deprecating humor there.
Yeah, so we'll try to keep this as light as we can. There is some really cool insights. Again, we're giving a tip of the hat to Matt Basak, and which Matt? Is that the right Matt?
Yep.
Yeah. And Brother Mesmer. So we're not going to go super like detailed through the document because it's crazy long, but we'll pull out some of the stuff. But if you really want to get a feel for the history and the backstory and all that kind of stuff, checking out this document from the Forbidden Knowledge Archive.
Yes.
Would be really good. And the title of this one is Power and Persuasion, Adolf 1, because it's actually 2 parts. We're only going to go into part 1 today.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of content here.
A lot of content, yes.
So we're going to get into, get into the, how Hitler was so persuasive.
Yeah.
Let's just sum it up like that. How he became so persuasive, and how do so many of these cult leaders become very persuasive or draw in so many followers, and they're so influential,
Yeah. And how can you do the same?
Yes. How can we train up the next generation of dictators, Sean?
Yeah, that's not what we're going for. But there are some principles that you can definitely use in sales and marketing.
Yeah.
As always, there's a ethical side and there's an unethical way to use these powers.
Absolutely.
So we're encouraging the ethical use. Also, if you know these things, you're more likely to be able to spot them.
Right.
So that is our service here as we talk about this. But yeah, so we're not glorifying Hitler anyway. Let's just go on the record and say that. We're simply looking at the fact that the man got an entire nation to get behind some pretty crazy ideas. And there are discernible reasons why he was able to do that. And that's what we're going to be talking about.
Absolutely.
And then how he did it. So, but before we get into that light subject, let's talk about heavy beers.
That's right. Heavy beers. So I'm getting away from the, I've been on my porter tangent lately.
Okay.
And my sweet baby Jesus and my sweet,
Yes.
all of those. I've been going through the series the last couple of weeks, but I got off onto a one that caught my eye just from a graphic standpoint. You know,
yes,
that's always appealing to see a can.
Craft beer is now like wine. We buy it for the packaging. You know,
exactly.
We absolutely judge a can by its cover.
That's right. And this one is very cool can cover. Look at this. It is Zombie Ice.
Nice.
That is pretty cool.
Yes, you got like a skull with blue eyes going on.
Yep.
Black can with like a silver skull, blue eyes. Yeah,
crafted with an unholy amount of citra hops, this undead pale ale heralds the zombie revolution after the dust has settled from the apocalypse, which is right around the corner, I'm sure.
A lot of citra hops, huh? I don't know. Good luck.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to expect. I actually was planning to, this is how I think, Sean. I brought my bourbon glass over today because I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to do a bourbon today. So I went by with every intention of getting a bourbon or maybe a mixed cocktail, like a old fashioned or something like that. And this one caught my eye. So you know what? I was like, I'm going to try this, and I'll just pour it in my bourbon glass.
There you go. And if you need to throw it out, you can fill it with bourbon. Right. Do you have bourbon in the office? You should.
I should. I don't.
Oh, no. Could be a long episode for you.
Yep.
All right. Well, I've got one called Big Country. I don't know if I've had this or not, but it's called Big Country. It's from Martin House Brewing up in Fort Worth, Texas. It is a smoked pecan and vanilla stout.
Oh,
10% ABV, and it's made in Texas by Texans. There's a pretty can, very
by Texans. Look at that, man!
A lot of artwork work on this can. So yeah, it's called Big Country. Looks almost like is that a fancy awesome. Bush can? Like I don't know, like kind of like the Bush commercials.
Like
and it is as black as my soul.
Wow, that looks amazing.
So
that looks incredible.
It smells good. Yeah, when I poured it, it actually has a little bit of like the head had a little, I guess, vanilla kind of brownish look to it instead of like a, super light. Even the head on it was dark. So anyway, all right, I'm ready to taste mine. You ready?
All right. Cheers. Drinking beer out of a bourbon glass. That's hilarious.
I like that. Drinking
actually looks like a little bourbon if it didn't have the froth,
Yeah. Looks like pine sol.
Actually, it's not that bad. It's not as citrusy as I thought.
That's good considering the way they described it.
Yeah.
Maybe citra hops are not what we think they are. Since we're not brewmasters. We're just drinkers.
No, I mean there is some citrus, but it's not what I expected. Well,
that's good.
I was expecting pine sol, and I didn't get it, so
that's a plus. All right, mine's pretty good. Why don't you go ahead and score yours?
Not my cup of tea normally, but considering what I was expecting over what I'm getting. I will give this a 3.7.
It's pretty good for a pale ale on this show.
Yeah.
It's not an India pale ale though, right? It's just a pale ale.
No, it's just a pale ale.
Yeah.
And obviously
makes all the difference.
Our ratings and our judgment has a lot to do with, can art plays a little part of that, a small part of that at least.
It definitely plays into the purchase.
Yeah, exactly.
And the hope.
Yep.
For sure.
Because if these were lousy, I mean, this is nice can art. I can use it, in some way.
Get that can pyramid growing in the bedroom.
That's right. There's a use for these, I'm sure.
Yeah.
No.
You go to Jonathan's house, the mantle is just full of beer cans from the show.
In the man cave, yes. Yeah.
That would be funny, actually.
All right. How about you?
So yeah, mine, I'm gonna give it. It's pretty smooth. I mean, for 10%, it's pretty smooth. I'm not getting. I don't taste the pecan in it at all, so I'm not sure where that comes from, or the smoke really.
Right.
Definitely get some of the vanilla. Get the stout. So I'm gonna give it a 3.5.
3.5.
It's good. It's just not
anything
like super special.
Right.
You know. So anyway, yeah, it's good, smooth. Typical nice heavy stout, vanilla stout. So it's good stuff.
Good.
All right, should we roll into the topic at hand today?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
I don't know where you want to start. There's so much. There was actually a lot of good stuff in this. These reports are just super in depth, really well written, lots of footnotes and history and all that kind of stuff. So really, really well done. The Forbidden Knowledge Archive, if you can get your hands on it.
Yeah.
I don't know where you find it, but I've had mine sitting in my digital file cabinet for years, and I'm not sure where I got it. I couldn't tell you. Obviously, it's by Matt Basak and Brother Mesmer, so you can maybe search for it like that. So they're calling this the SMC 33 mass persuasion formula.
Because sounds very technical.
Yeah, because the SMC 33, right, creates curiosity. Seems like it must mean something, and it does. Basically, it means the secret mind control, and then the 33 is from 1933 when Hitler became Chancellor of Germany.
Yeah,
so that's why they picked it. That's it's kind of a technique we used back in the Agora days, or I did. You kind of just use initials of something to make it sound more important than it actually is.
Oh, absolutely. Works. Yeah, it does. Works. Absolutely.
So where do you want to start? I know you got your notes there. You've been taking studious notes, getting ready to plant and launch your cult soon, from what I understand.
I'm going to start out with, so there's so much to take away from it. So I think where I'll start, is given a foundation for the effectiveness that, or how effective, people like Hitler and.
I'm curious to see if you kind of highlighted some of the same stuff I did, because we're working on this independently throughout the week.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious to see where you start and kind of where I had my notes starting.
Interesting enough, he references Charles Manson in here too. I mean, so this is we're not just, Hitler's one figure because he's the most well known. I mean, most people know who Charles Manson, Jim Jones.
But Hitler's crowd was so much bigger than any of these guys.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that I want to start with 7 great hidden persuaders, because this is maybe lays a foundation for, the effectiveness that in all of these, you can see where, Hitler, puts his message out.
Yeah. And I definitely had that section. So I think right before we go to that, I would like to.
Yeah.
You said the 7 hidden persuaders, right?
Yep.
Okay. So I wanted, so I'll go back a little bit further and I'll lay a little bit different foundation here.
Okay.
This quote stuck out to me. It says, Hitler's success was not based on his extraordinary gifts alone. His genius was an intuitive sense of the mushiness, the character flaws, the weakness masquerading as morality that was in the hearts of the statesmen who stood in his path. It's a pretty bold statement.
It is.
And there's a lot of truth to it. And nobody likes to talk about this stuff, but understanding the mushiness, the character flaws, the weaknesses masquerading as morality in an audience definitely gives you an ability to hit them emotionally in a way that you can't do otherwise. And this leads directly into the 7 things you were talking about.
Yeah.
And I thought this was good right at the top of the report. He wrote this, and I think it's a good kind of warning for our listeners as well. So it says, therefore, open your mind and lend us your ear. Let go of your judgments. It's time to learn from Hitler. These lessons will not be theoretical lessons. Hitler proved their worth in the battlefields of politics, economics, war, and life. Hitler's lessons are for doers, for action takers. If you are such a one or wish to be, then join us. This journey is not for all. If it is for you, then welcome. Let us begin.
Let us begin. There's a lot of crossover. There's some takeaways too from, we've mentioned Cialdini, which is another great book for any new listeners out there. Robert Cialdini's 6 Principles of Persuasion. A lot of those things are highlighted in this.
Yeah, so let's talk about the 7 hidden persuaders. And I want to come back to Hitler's formula that he used in his speeches. Because once we reveal these, you'll see why the formula worked so well because of these seven hidden persuaders. So let's jump into those.
Okay.
And I think right before that, there was a line that just really stuck out to me too, right in this section. Let's see. This is why it's so absolutely crucial that the seller or the guru or the future cult leader present themselves as having acquired the ultimate mystery solution, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. Nothing else will cut it. And then this was in bold. We are programmed for worship. We are trained in devotion. We are conditioned to surrender.
Right.
These are the deepest, darkest, baddest subconscious programs around. And they are all fueled by the 7 hidden persuaders. So, Jonathan, what are the 7 hidden persuaders?
Well, the first one is hope. Everyone needs hope.
Yes.
If you want to see a formula for unhappiness, for human disaster, just negate all 7 hidden persuader needs. I have no hope, no power, no wrong. Nobody notices me. Nobody understands me, and so on. So it's a great lead in to the first one, which is you have to give hope to the individual.
And what they said in the report is like, these are not just like good ideas or principles or marketing tactics. These are visceral human needs, not just wants. These are things that we need to survive.
Yeah.
I think, was it Viktor Frankl, his whole thing was like man's search for meaning and his stay in the concentration camps, to take the flip side of this story.
Yeah.
Right. When prisoners lost hope, they died.
Right.
Even in the Bible, it's like those, where there's no hope, the people perish, right?
People perish. Yes.
And literally that means die. So hope is literally life or death. If people don't have hope, this is why people commit suicide, right? Because they lose the last bit of hope that they have.
Mm-hmm.
So hope is super, super powerful. And it doesn't have to be huge, but they do need some hope.
Politicians the best politicians are masters at this. And
well, I mean, that was Obama, right? Yeah. Hope and change.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, you can't get more direct. Like, they didn't even hide it. They're like,
yeah,
you need hope. We got hope.
Yep.
We got hope right here.
That's right.
So yeah, hope is a huge, huge hidden persuader, because it's one of the universal super needs that everybody has.
Right.
What's the next one?
Next one is you need to feel, and this is when this is to the people that you're influencing. They need to feel that they're right. Right.
Yes. Or left.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Or left. No, but they need to know that what they're doing or what, what they're, we talked about, like, it's not your fault, it's not your fault that you're in this situation. It's not your fault.
Yep.
I think Hitler was a master at, giving the people hope, but also letting them know that, the situation that they were in, financially, from, the first World War and all of the
Treaty of Versailles and the destruction
absolutely.
of Germany.
Right.
Yeah. So
There was a reason. It wasn't their fault. It was brought on
right
by the scapegoats or the scapegoat or the enemies out there that were trying to put them down. And obviously, one of the scapegoats were the Jewish people, right? I mean, that was one of the obvious scapegoats for him, was to present
they were taking the good jobs. They were
good
taking,
jobs.
put them against the German people. But yeah, it's important to understand the context of when Hitler came around. I think if I remember correctly, reading the report here, it was 16 years after Versailles.
Mm-hmm.
They'd basically been in deflationary period. They're looking at ruined buildings around them still.
Yeah.
After, you can imagine, after 16 years of just not getting ahead and just coming out of a major world war that was fought on your soil. Like, we can't even comprehend that here really in the US, because we didn't have to go through that.
Right.
So they're at this low point as a society.
Mm-hmm.
And, nothing's working. They're not getting ahead. The rest of the world is kind of moved on. They're left with all the trouble they're left with. So they need hope. And then they need to feel that they're right about something.
Sure.
Right. So he's gonna provide that. And then the third thing, what do people need? What do the people need?
You need to feel that you have power or control.
Right. So when people feel like they're out of control,
mm-hmm.
or they are powerless,
right,
they will grab onto anything that gives them a sense that they have power or control again.
That's right.
And you see this a lot in, mass crowds, which is obviously the way Hitler got his point across, was through the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
It's how all great politicians do it. It's how all great gurus, different size crowds, but politicians seem to have one of the biggest stages,
right?
To be able to do this.
Think of this statement: we need to take our country back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what does that imply? That we need to wrestle the control back, right?
Yeah,
away from the
somebody else has control. We need to get it back,
gain it back. Absolutely,
right? Because people. So if we need to get back control,
mm-hmm.
then that means somebody else has it, which goes against our core need to be in control.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then number 4,
you need to be noticed by others, right?
Wow. I mean, this is showing up everywhere in our world, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is all social media is feeding this one need more than any other. Social media is, that thing where people can try to be seen. Problem is, it's, a lot of times it's the opposite. Like, you feel less seen.
Yeah.
But the promise of social media is that you will be seen.
Think of it. What is a news event that happened this week that brings this to mind, Sean? Can you think of something? I've got something.
I did not watch the news at all this week, but I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay. So I'll use a current event in the news this week with up in Ohio, where the train derailment.
Oh, okay.
Yes, in East Palestine. Yeah,
I heard about that late last week.
Yeah. So, and I know about this because it's been so prevalent just for the last 2 weeks. It's just been top of mind.
Yeah.
But obviously, I think the news plays a huge part in, obviously the
and depending on which
aspect of which, depending on which way you're going. But
exactly.
one thing that was obvious is that a lot of the people in that town, now who knows what the percentage is.
Mm-hmm.
Always the news is going to portray like a significant portion of the people, but I can only imagine, I feel for residents of that area, people like I was about to sell my house and move to Florida, and now no one wants to buy in this area. I mean, think about that, so that's a pretty, stressful situation. And so what was these people are painted as like no one was showing up, no one was taking responsibility. I think that I'm pretty sure the train company has taken responsibility, and they're working to clean up and fix the situation. But it was painted as, we've been overlooked. No one cares about us. We're just a small town.
Yeah.
And what happens? No, the government, no federal aid, or no one from the federal government shows up, which, again, this is all manufactured in the news. And then what happens? Trump shows up, as some symbol of hope, for the people. He shows up at a McDonald's
and to be
walking around, and he's talking to people and, acknowledging them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what people want.
And to be fair, it could have been any politician that would take the time to go in, because what made Hitler so successful, besides putting the tactics and things that we're talking about into play, was he walked into this environment that was rich with this type of, need for hope. Just like East Palestine, they're like in Ohio, they felt hopeless, right? Because their water has been contaminated, or they think it has, but they're not sure. They don't know if they're right or not right at this point. They feel completely powerless and like no control over what happened, because it's bigger than them.
Right.
And nobody was really paying attention, especially the first week. Like it wasn't really even on the news, and it kind of bubbled up through social media. Then the news, the mainstream news started covering it.
Yeah.
So you can imagine that first week, they're like not being seen. So there's 4 needs right off the bat that are not being met. So anybody could have stepped into that situation.
Yep.
And just acknowledged it.
Yeah.
And pointed a finger at the train company, or pointed a finger at FEMA, or whoever you want to make the scapegoat. And that person all of a sudden becomes smarter than them, more able than them. And they start to give their power to that person, whoever it is.
Right.
All right. So that's 4 of the 5. So we had, you need hope. You need to feel that you're right. You need to feel that you have power, control, and you need to be noticed by others, at least one other person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is number 5?
You need to be understood, right? Understood by others. So that's a nice follow-up.
Yeah, there's a difference between being noticed and understood.
Sure. Yep.
Like you can be noticed because you're a streaker at a soccer match, but not many people may understand you.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. That implies empathy. Like you have to have empathy. That's something that some of the best persuaders out there, empathy is a huge trait that they have. And empathy is simply understanding the other person's point of view. Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Yes, Master Covey.
That's right.
Covey say.
That
should be a
7 Habits.
Covey say. Bring that back. Still one of the best books that nobody talks about anymore.
Absolutely. One of my all-time favorites. I wish I would read that every year. Yeah. I mean, it should be read every year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that is ultimately the starting point of anybody understanding their perspective, understanding where they're coming from. Right. Yep. And this is crucial in sales and crucial in political influence, crucial in everything where you're trying to get your point of view across. You're not going to get your point of view across until you understand their point of view and understand their situation.
Yep. And what they're looking for, so that you can tie what you have to what they want.
Exactly.
Which goes back to, Eugene Schwartz, when we talked about breakthrough advertising. You've got to find that thread that ties your product to their ultimate desire.
Yep.
And you can always do it. It's not that hard to do. You just have to sit down and do it.
Right.
So what is number 6 then? Continuing on our list of 7 hidden persuaders.
Speaking of hidden, you need to know secrets that others don't and that you shouldn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this to me is kind of, I thought this was interesting because to me it's sort of a form of number 3, which is to have power control, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because really the only reason we want to know secrets is because it gives us a sense of control.
Right.
We have something on somebody. We have a layer of knowledge that could protect us from something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I remember when I first I've said this before, but like when I first started writing at Agora, I remember my copy chief. He's like, "It's like, isn't secrets overused?" He's like, "No, just keep using it.
Just keep using it, baby,
because it keeps working." And it does.
Absolutely.
Like it's like, and the other thing he said, it's always a secret to somebody.
Right. Yeah.
If you've got a list of 5,000 people or 500,000 people, like Agora does, on that list, there's people who that is a secret to them.
Yeah.
And you only need 1 to 5% of those people to buy that particular offer.
Sure.
For it to be a success.
Yeah.
So yeah, secrets are really, really powerful. I would have never thought of these as a need though, but I can see it now that it's kind of in this list. But
right.
At first I didn't think that would be like this biological need that we need to know secrets. But I guess it makes sense. Like if you were in a tribe, if we go, everybody likes to compare to like if we were in a tribe, ancestral stuff. Each member of the tribe like had their specialty, right? You had the hunting specialist, you had the shaman, you had the different people had different jobs within the tribe. So if you were like one of the hunters, you better know some hunting secrets that the other people don't know to make you valuable to keep you around. We see this on shows like Survivor, right? The one with the secret, like everybody knows they have a secret and all of a sudden they have power and control again.
Yeah.
All right. So what is number 7? This one's interesting.
You need to escape to have your free floating attention grounded.
So you want to describe this one? I mean, I read about it, but I just thought it was interesting. And I kind of get it. Like,
yeah, I mean, most of us, I'll just I'll kind of summarize what they say. Most of us lack discipline. As a result, our attention, our focus is all over the place. So we are constantly getting stimulated and distracted by our environment.
Yeah.
So in contrast, it can feel very comfortable and secure to have somebody perform the service for us of catching and collecting our attention and then focusing it, anchoring it on something sophisticated and well formulated.
Like
how about television?
Television.
Or how about that's kind of dated. No one watches television anymore. Not live television. So
whatever. Everybody says that, but I don't know. There's still
social media. How about that one?
I mean, I think it's funny when people say I don't watch TV, but then they stream Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I said live TV.
Yeah, it's the same thing though. I mean, it's like it's all programming and stories and stuff designed to capture your attention and keep your attention. But yeah, I thought that was interesting that we have this need to escape because we have all this diverted, scattered attention, and then in this, like, when I first read that, I was like, I thought an escape was like to get away from any focus.
Right. That's it. Yeah, that was my thing. Is like, I always think of like movies as kind of escape away from any focus. I mean, that's why we are attracted to movies or television in the first place. Is like to get away from that.
But I can see that side of it too. Like, it is an escape into something very specific, right?
Yeah.
A movie is I mean, and sometimes people call it an escape, right?
Right.
Get an escape to the theater, take an escape on a vacation or whatever. You go to the beach for 5 days and you just sit on the beach.
Yeah.
With nothing else going on.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of a not focus thing. But we're not, it does kind of boil down into having our attention gathered into a little bit more narrow field from what I understand.
Yeah.
Cool. So those are the 7 hidden persuaders. Those are the needs in the average person or all people.
Yep.
Some of them are fulfilled right now. Some of them aren't.
Yep.
But if you can tap into these, and the more you can tap into, the better. The more you can have their attention, the more you can control what you want them to do, how you want them to act, what you want them to purchase, all these things. And some people out there are probably thinking, oh, this sounds a lot like manipulation. And it kind of is.
That's why we're talking about it.
But just like anything else.
Because everybody listening to this has I mean, everybody is falling prey to all of these things we've talked about. I don't care what you say. We've
Yeah,
all
for sure.
been, we've all been enticed by hope. We've all been enticed by secrets that no one else knows. Insider secrets.
Well, I mean, so let's step back from like Hitler for a second.
Yeah.
And let's talk about let's use something that you and I both have bought a lot of, and that's Apple products, right? We've mentioned this before.
Right.
But how do Apple products fulfill these 7 things, right? So if we look at that, hope, well, I hope this is better than, a better tool for me. And I hope that it makes me more productive. I hope that it's easier to use. I hope it doesn't break down as often. I hope it doesn't get viruses.
Sure.
Like it fulfills a lot of different hopes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The need to feel that you're right. Well, I want to make the right choice when I buy a piece of equipment, right?
Yeah.
Piece of, whether it's a computer or phone or whatever. And if I can buy into a crowd that is all saying this is great, then it makes me feel right because, hey, other people are buying this. Other people are liking it. Right. It kind of goes back to the old Mac versus PC commercials, right? It's like, you're right if you're on the Apple side, you're wrong if you're on the PC side.
Absolutely.
And then the need to feel power and control, the need to be noticed. I mean, how many people do we flip open our MacBook in the coffee shop? Especially back when they had the big glowing Apple on the back. Now it's just a shiny sticker.
Yeah.
But back when it lit up, that was a status symbol, right? Especially 10, 12 years ago before they got super popular and took so much market share.
Right.
So you wanted to be noticed and understood, right? Other Apple users understood you,
right,
when you bought an Apple computer. Secrets and escape. I don't know exactly what those would be, but they're in there as well.
Well, the secrets would be, I think the secrets at the time, Apple's market share has expanded, but if you go back to, when I bought a Mac, and the first time I ever bought a MacBook was back in, I can remember it was back in 2011.
Yeah.
And, I can apply these to a lot of the things that you've just said, Sean, but
yeah,
if you say the insider, Mac, I always thought okay, those Mac guys, they've got an upper edge. I mean, they've got an edge because they don't deal with the kind of crap that I do with Microsoft, and this was this was dealing with Vista and, coming off of what a disaster that,
and virus software that you had to get that you didn't seem to have to get for Mac.
That's right. And
all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And so our Apple positioned themselves to have the insider's edge to not having these issues, right? I mean, just the upper hand, so to speak, and the advantage, the escape away from, all of the mundane issues that these peons that own a PC.
The escape too is even the design, right? You get to feel grounded in the coolness, the design of Apple products.
Right. Yeah.
Especially like you said back then. Those two worlds have come so much closer together now that there's not a lot of differences like there used to be.
Sure. But guess what? I mean, they have done a phenomenal job of locking people into their ecosystem.
Yeah, they're more profitable than ever.
Exactly. They got them 10, 15 years ago. And
you
don't see too many people. I would love to see the statistics of people that go from, have gone from Mac back to, PC, because I would say it's not that big. I mean, it's not very large compared to the people that go from PC.
Yeah, now they probably wouldn't even say PC. They'd probably say, if anybody's making that switch, they're going to Droid, Android.
Right, exactly.
They're going to probably Samsung, Samsung's pushing the edge now as far as phones and even computers, and they're creating an ecosystem with their tablets and watches, very much like Apple did. But it's interesting that as Apple has gotten less cool, I don't know what this means, but it's interesting that as they've gotten less cool and more and more popular as far as just market share.
Yeah.
But the fan base has actually gotten less devoted. They've actually gotten more profitable.
Yeah.
It seems like that shouldn't happen, but like you said, they got people so entrenched in the ecosystem that they just can't leave almost.
They can't. Yeah, they're locked in.
Yeah.
They're a prisoner.
Yeah. Golden handcuffs.
Yeah, that's right.
So
similar to the cult followers, we locked on early, Sean, as followers. And so and a lot of this, you talk about going back to Cialdini, principles of influence or commitment and consistency. We committed a long time ago, and we're going to stay in it. We're going to follow them no matter how much they abuse us.
How many dongles they make us buy.
We're like that, that abused girlfriend or fiance that keeps coming back.
Oh man, can you imagine? That'd be a great campaign for Samsung. I don't know if it would work or not. That could
that would not work. It would get you in a lot of trouble probably this day and age. But it really is. I mean, you think about it. How much has Apple abused their loyal buyers over the years, and we just keep taking it. And and then in the process, like that girlfriend or fiance, we make excuses. Well, they're working out, ultimately they're forward thinking, they got rid of the USB because they're really forward thinking. They're, which,
well, I mean, it goes back to the Steve Jobs philosophy that people don't know what they want. You got to give it, you got to tell them what they want. They don't know what they want.
That's right.
And there's a lot of truth to that. Like nobody would have said, get rid of the headphone jack. That's, and yet it worked because now everybody likes wireless. I mean, I still like a wired headphone, but I'm old too. So
absolutely.
But for taking calls, I still use literally I still use my wired headphone when I take calls because it's more secure and just not secure, but like doesn't drop, doesn't buzz out and all that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, it's cool. So it's, that's an example of how these things apply to just everyday products. That last segment there where we just badmouth Apple is probably the real reason we'll get banned from iTunes. Then they'll just blame it on Hitler. That'll be their scapegoat.
Even though we're still loyal customers, we can badmouth. I mean, we'll badmouth them until we're probably in our grave and still buying their stuff.
Buy their stuff, right? So I wanted to let's kind of go back a little bit because I want to work around to Hitler's formula that he used in speeches.
Yeah.
Because I think it's really a good framework that you could use in copy.
Okay.
And now going over the 7 things we just went over, this was an excerpt from a 1943 CIA report about Hitler when they were trying to figure out who this guy was.
Absolutely.
And it says Hitler's unprecedented appeal, the elevation of this man to the status of a demigod, can be explained only on the hypothesis that he and his ideology have almost exactly met the needs, longings, and sentiments of the majority of Germans.
Ooh.
So they're saying maybe Hitler was or not maybe. Hitler was maniacal. He was, he took advantage of people.
Yeah.
But it could not have happened if the needs and the longings and the sentiment of the Germans weren't already there.
Sure.
And I pulled up some of the videos that are linked to in this document. One of them was a documentary that they had made, and the thousands of just screaming and adoring fans. These people were not being, you can tell by the video, these people are not being coerced to love this guy.
Right.
They actually saw him as hope, as a way out of what they've been going through and all these things. It was real devotion.
Sure.
Because he was filling these needs.
Yeah.
He was offering a solution. He was offering a plan.
Yeah. And that's what we talk about. The best marketers out there or the best persuaders they're just tapping in. They're not changing persuasion is not changing your thinking. Good persuasion is tapping into the conversations you're already having, the conversations that you're already having in your head, the conversations you're having with the people that that's tapping into that to persuade you to their point of view. So it's very difficult to change somebody's thinking if they're not on board in the first place, or if they're not having that conversation or not already thinking along those lines.
Yeah, it's very difficult to change people's minds. It's very easy to lead them where they are already going.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I think that's the mistake a lot of marketers make, is they're so bent on trying to change people's minds instead of figuring out the need and funneling that need. And this is classic, Eugene Schwartz, breakthrough advertising, like first page of the book. Like, you do not create desire, you channel desire into your product, the existing desire into the product.
Now, so Sean, you just got through saying Steve Jobs said people don't know what they don't know what they want.
Right.
So we just got through saying Steve Jobs says people don't know what they want. Right.
Right.
And yet we're on the flip side, we're saying you got to tap into that desire.
because I think what he's saying is people don't know the features or the things, the gadgets they want. But he does know that their ultimate desire is an easier life, a better life, a more hope.
They don't know how to express that desire.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So it's not that. Yeah, and they may not even be aware of it consciously.
Right.
And I think it's what he's saying.
Yeah.
And they certainly don't know what actual like gadgets or like they know the benefit they probably want, and they even if they don't, they certainly know what they don't want.
Right.
I mean, Ryan Levesque talks about this in his book, the Ask Method. He's like, I don't know if you've ever the opening the opening chapter that he's like, imagine you're in a car with your friends and everybody's like, where do you want to go from dinner? Nobody gives you an answer, but if you start throwing stuff out, everybody knows what they don't want.
That's right. Right.
And it takes a while to get around to what people want, but everybody knows immediately when you say it that they don't want that.
Exactly. In the same sense, going back to Steve Jobs, no one imagines 1,000 songs in your pocket until you explain that. Right.
Yeah. Right.
I'm like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah. But if you had waited for the world to request
you,
they would have never thought
of it. No, right? we just want to listen to an album.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's what we were used to, right? A CD, cassette, or a CD. We were listening to one album at a time.
Yeah. So if you were really fancy, like I got for Christmas, one time I got like the 50 CD changer. Remember that thing? Giant thing.
Absolutely.
It sat on the stereo rack.
Right. Right.
And that was the coolest thing ever. I mean, that was the closest thing to iTunes, right? Because you could just drop all 50 CDs in and it just went forever.
Yeah.
That was like the first streaming, really, because it could carry so many things. And there, I mean, I guess there was a 6-disc version for like, some of the really nice cars had the 6-disc CD, like the Lexus 300 back in the early 90s had a 6 CD changer. That was like amazing because you could put, I mean, that'll get you halfway across the country, right? Without commercials, without anything.
Right.
But nobody put it together that they could have 1,000 songs in the pocket, like you just said.
Right.
So
the ability to summarize that, the ability to sum that up.
Yeah.
So that people can visualize that. It's incredible.
All right. So here's let's talk about Hitler's formula. We'll wrap up with this. So this is the formula that they kind of broke down, all of this, kind of taking the history and everything, all the different pieces and reading stuff about Hitler and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Here's the basic formula for his speeches and he was his own speechwriter for the most part. So these are the kind of the key points that he wanted in his speeches when he was going to go fire up the crowd. Number 1, it's only 5 parts, pretty simple. It seems like every, a good 5-part essay for school, college essay, right?
Right.
So number 1 is talk about something important that the group has in common. This brings the group together automatically. first, then, so that means group unity occurs, right? So the first thing you do, there's also, you could break this down into 3 sections: affirmation, repetition, and contagion.
Yeah.
So this is kind of part of the affirmation part. So you want to talk about something they have in common. So if I was on the political circuit right now, I would talk about the cost of groceries and egg, our basic, how expensive things have gotten in the grocery store, right? Because everybody has that in common. Just inflation in general. I could talk about that, and my crowd would instantly be unified around this pain, around this problem, that's important to them because it affects their paycheck and everything else, right? How much money they have and all that. So that's just one example. There's an endless number of examples you could use. So then number 2, right? So you've got them now kind of together, right? They're like, yes, we're with you. Yes, we understand what you're saying. Yes, that makes sense. Now it's like, okay, number 2 is identify a threat, an enemy, a danger to that element that the group shares together. So let's say we're, talking about groceries being expensive. Your basic food needs are just going through the roof.
Right.
So you can then say, well, it's going to get worse because the government's not doing anything about it. They're actually planning to raise prices even more because they're going to devalue your currency, blah, 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 blah. Right. So you can really get them to get these, you can get your in using old copywriting language, you're agitating the pain.
Sure.
Right. So the problem agitates solution.
Right.
So this is the agitation stage where you got them to agree that there's a problem. Now you're agitating that problem. And then number 3 is, and in this report, they say this is the most important point. And I'll just read it. It says, it is the one that most people miss. We alluded to it before by saying that power is for the taking, but not for the asking. We didn't really get into that section.
Right.
Millionaire Dan Kennedy calls it the brass balls factor.
Yeah.
This step is to proclaim that you have access, you, the speaker, or the guru, the product owner, whatever, have access to a mysterious solution that is above and beyond anything they know or have heard of.
Sure.
As the channel or guru representative of this higher answer, you stand before them as the embodiment of the solution they seek to the problem just stirred up.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, and this is the part, and they say this in this report, this is the part most people are not willing to do in their marketing.
Yeah.
Because it feels a little gross and it feels a little like, I don't want to be that guy, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, right.
But if you look at all the successful gurus in any niche, whether it's Tony Robbins, whether it's a weight loss somebody, whether it's Julian Michaels for weight loss or somebody else for weight loss, whoever's popular right now, I don't know. They say, hey, my method, my XYZ method, that I've taken 10 years of study, I've spent thousands of dollars in research, like this is it.
Right.
Finally figured it out, and I have the solution.
Yep.
And I'm going to share it with you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All you have to do is go to this website. And it sounds awful when we say it, but this is actually how this stuff works. And I know our listeners, they know that. And you can't tell this to most people, like, because they're asleep and they don't want to know this stuff.
Right.
They actually want somebody to follow. They actually need somebody to follow. Where was it earlier? Yeah, this is from, there was a guy named Lebon, Lebon, that's mentioned in this report that they think Hitler got a lot of his ideas and as far as like how to speak and all, how to control crowds and things like that, not his ideas of like genocide and all that stuff. And Lebon said, men find their happiness in worship and obedience and are ready to lay down their lives for their idol.
Yes.
So they are looking for, and if you take a
looking for a leader,
if you take a, if you're a Christian, you believe in creation, you believe that we're all, created with this longing to worship something. obviously we're to worship God. Well, if we're not worshiping God, we're looking for something else to fill that hole, right? Maybe we haven't found God yet, so we're looking for somebody else as
we
a
have a
substitute
substitute,
for that.
right?
And that's what he's talking about here. Like, we're designed for worship, we're designed for obedience, we're designed for that following. And so when somebody shows up, it's just natural for us to want to do that.
Yeah.
So that was number 3. Like, you have to be willing to take the power and be that person that steps forward with the golden chalice, the one solution, the one answer, and all that. And then number 4 says, assuming the group accepts this claim, which it will if it's delivered with a real confidence and conviction. And how many times have we said on the show, like, certainty sells? Like, you're in sales, I'm in sales. Like, we know certainty more than anything, more than specs, more than anything else. Certainty is what sells.
Yeah.
And then number 5 is you close strong by declaring that this mysterious but revolutionary answer from above will be a glorious triumph for the group and its source. So you basically say, you future pace, to use copywriting language, you would future pace. Look, now that you see what this is, now that I'm offering it to you, this is what'll happen with the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Once we get rid of, and in Hitler's words, like, once we get rid of the Jews, there'll be more jobs, there'll be more whatever, because that was the scapegoat that they wanted to get rid of. Right. And I'll say this one last thing, and then, well, first of all, do you have anything on that? I don't want to cut you off.
No, it's used in, I'm thinking everywhere this is used in politics and, cult followings everywhere. So, politicians use it all the time. If we just get rid of, like you said, if we, get rid of it, the board, if we put a border wall and we can keep the illegals from coming over, we can keep them from taking our jobs. Well, whatever. That's like, that's their answer to fix everything. So, but the reality is, if you think about it, like, anybody that's out in reality, which is talking to business owners out there and huge manufacturers, that they can't get people to come. They can't get people to come to work. They're having the biggest challenge of their lives, just getting people to come to work.
Yeah.
And you're saying that these people are taking jobs. Give me a break. That's not happening, but it's used all the time, by politicians, because it's going back to a scapegoat. If we just fix this, then it'll bring American jobs back. Well, unemployment's at one of the lowest levels we've had. It's like, but we still can't find, workers, the right workers, for those jobs. So,
yep. And next, it'll be AI and the robots that are taking the jobs. And
Absolutely.
That'll be the enemy.
There will be exactly. AI will be the big enemy. And you already see it in the news. If you listen to the news, they've been poking fun at AI this past week or so, from a bias standpoint. The people that programmed, obviously the writers that write the programming for AI, have a bias lean. Of course they do. That's going to happen. Anybody that creates something is going to have their own bias to that. But
especially as we get into more knowledge, based stuff instead of just machines, right?
Right.
So the last thing I wanted to cover that I thought was really interesting in this report, and we'll wrap with this. This is another thing most people are not willing to do, and they don't take far enough.
Yeah.
So we've kind of mentioned that you need a scapegoat, right? You need something to blame.
Yeah.
Here's the part that I hadn't even put this together myself. So when I read it, I was like, ooh, I don't know. That's a little strong. But now that I've thought about it, I'm like, yeah, that seems right. It's not enough to have a scapegoat. You have to get rid of or kill the scapegoat.
Yeah. Ooh.
And that feels really like intense. Like, if you think about it, right? But that's what Hitler did, right? Now, you may not have to do it quite as literally as he did,
Yeah.
You don't have to kill the enemy, but you do have to make them go away.
Right.
And there's different ways you can do that. But it's not enough to just cast the blame. You have to show that there's a way to remove the scapegoat from the problem.
Yeah, but you don't want to remove it completely, because then
right. Well, and they said that in the report too. It's like you have to. It's always going to come back because people get lazy. They get they forget.
Right.
I heard. I don't remember what I was watching. I think it was. I was listening to the Ed Mylett show with Tim Tebow podcast, and they mentioned like how many times the Israelites had to be reminded that they just came out of slavery as they were walking around, right? And it's like,
absolutely.
I think Tim said in the show is like 22 times, in like 2 chapters, they were reminded, hey, you're okay. We got you. But, and they just kept forgetting. So you have to remind people of the scapegoat, and you have to remind that you have to continually re-sacrifice the scapegoat over and over. Right. And it is more figurative than literal. But that's what the wall was, to use your example, right? It's like, and they can keep using it, right? Well, they're digging around the wall, they're climbing over the wall. The wall's not quite finished, so they're still coming around. Like,
that's right.
So you can continue to use it, until it just like, it's like. But most people don't want to go there. Most marketers, most leaders, they don't want to go there. So there's 2 big pieces that most people are not willing to do. One is to just absolutely take the power and the center stage. And then 2 is to kill the scapegoat. Those 2 things, everything else is basic persuasion. Those 2 things are what make cult leaders, and what make really great marketers, even ethical. What really makes them work, because they find an ethical scapegoat. They find an ethical, way to stand in front of the group. And most people aren't willing to do that. And Matt, there's people like, you think of any, there's different groups, like some of these men's groups that have come up in the last 5-10 years, right? Those leaders are taking that kind of role, whether it's Wake Up Warrior, Lions Not Sheep. Like, those leaders are kind of, they've got a clear enemy. They're willing to take the power. They're willing to be the example, and all that kind of stuff. So those are good. Those are a couple good examples too.
I saw some. I watched a 30. Do you ever watch these 30 for 30 films?
Man, it's been a while. I used to love those. I mean, they're always a little depressing at the same time.
Yeah, they are.
A sad bent to them. Yeah, they're good. They're super well done.
Yeah,
and the E60, same thing. Like, those are really good.
I watched one recently. It reminds me of what you're talking about with Bill McCartney, he used to be the former head coach of the University of Colorado back, I'd say, like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But after he retired from coaching, he started a Christian organization.
Oh, Promise Keepers.
Promise Keepers. Yeah, absolutely. I was trying to think of that just for a second there, and I was like, what is that? But yeah, he started that, Promise Keepers. I mean, which they're not.
Was that late 90s? That I guess
it was mid to late 90s. I think. Mid to late 90s. Huge.
They were filling stadiums.
Absolutely.
That was like the first, like, before these men's groups. Now that was like that was the men's thing for a good 5 or 6 years.
Right. Yeah, crazy. Absolutely. And he built a huge following, and then it comes out that he had to confess to his wife of an affair, which, I mean, just obviously, that hurt him from a standpoint of, he's the leader of this movement, or he was kind of a symbolic leader of that movement at the time. But,
which was all about integrity and keeping the promise.
Exactly. So, I mean, it just goes to show, I mean, it's kind of an interesting dynamic of how people do put their reliance on, or they put their hope in individuals, or they're looking for
that's what's crazy, is because that entire movement with millions of people and men in it completely fell apart when the one leader, fell apart. I think Jonathan froze on me.
Oh, there we go.
There you are.
Yeah, it was shortly after that. It was not the same, and eventually
now you would think with literally millions of men, right, that somebody could have stepped up,
right?
But nobody was willing to take that kind of lead because it's too much responsibility. It's too much pressure for most people, and they don't want to do it. Right. And that's why you don't have a lot of movements. And when they do, people become targets and things like that. Like it's because it's a lot for a person to take on.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna, be the face of a brand, or even if your brand is going to be the face of a movement, there's a lot involved in that, and it's not to be taken lightly. And you're going to have to, as this report, mentioned Dan Kennedy and the brass balls factor. Like, it's not easy if you're going to lead a group of people and fulfill their hopes and give them back control and power, or at least the feeling of it. You're probably going to have to go way outside your comfort zone to make that happen.
Yeah.
And you're putting yourself at risk as the leader. I mean,
yeah,
most of the leaders
better be sure that you got no skeletons.
Yeah.
We talked about Liver King.
Yeah.
Recently, that dude, he was on fire there. I mean, he was like a burning ember there for about a year. And
yeah, I mean, he went from 0 to 1 million followers in like 9 months. I mean, it's crazy. People would, well, obviously people will do anything for that.
Yeah.
So Chris, looks like our buddy Chris O'Hearn got his name working on the Facebooks.
Yeah.
The step up factor. Can you live it? Yeah, that's right. It's a great term, the step up factor, because that's really what it is. If you're going to if you truly want to lead a movement, and isn't it interesting how many movement leaders, not to scare anybody out there, but how many of them get killed? Just Martin Luther King, JFK, Jesus, Hitler, like on both sides too.
Right.
If you're leading a movement, like you're definitely putting yourself out there, and that's a risk. So
you'll be in jail or dead.
Yeah, there's not, man.
No, but no, good point, Sean, because you really do have to be, you better be dedicated. And that's what you see among the most charismatic influencers and the most charismatic leaders. And Hitler, let's not kid ourselves. Hitler was amazingly charismatic.
Yeah. This report too said he trained for it though too.
Absolutely.
He rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed too.
Well, in very similar fashion was Charles Manson, who learned his persuasive techniques from the book How to Win Friends and Influence People, if you didn't know that. So he when his first stint in prison, as I mentioned, I think I forgot what his first stint in prison was for, but during that time he got a copy of How to Win Friends and Influence People while he was in prison, and used that and literally went through the book over and over and mastered the art of influencing people.
Yeah.
Becoming their friends and understanding, using empathy.
Yeah. All those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's good examples as well, right? I mean, and a lot of times the bad examples rise to the top because we love sensationalism, we love those kind of things. But there are plenty of good examples, people doing good work, leading movements, that you could go out there and find. They may not be as big as moving an entire country necessarily, but they're out there. CrossFit was one for quite a while, with what the CrossFit founder did and that movement.
Yep.
He made barbells mainstream almost, right? And before very few people had ever lifted a barbell and done squats and power cleans and all these things. Now it's pretty common.
Yeah.
So there's those types of things too. Obviously now he's even had to step down because he did some crazy stuff, said some stupid things, right?
Right.
Because I think at that you can also get very disconnected at that level of leadership if you're not careful and you don't have yourself surrounded by good people that can call you out.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think you can get in. That's where people get in trouble.
Sure. Absolutely.
So, this is probably the best comment we've ever gotten on the show. So, just say it. My favorite leaders are Sean McCool and Jonathan Taylor.
Awesome.
Thanks, Chris.
Let's go start a cult there, Sean. What are we going to call it?
We got one member anyway. Your dues are coming up, Chris. We'll send you a place to mail your check.
One thing that I love about this this report and that we've gone through is he's amazing. I mean, it's incredible footnotes throughout this thing that you can reference and go and there's a whole lot of resources that you can research along the way. So
you can go really deep in this if you want.
Big time. Yeah.
Like
all of the books that were he pulled his research, or a lot of this. I mean, you can tell he put a lot of research into this and just didn't write it off the cuff. I mean, judging by all the footnotes or
his VAs did anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, I doubt he did.
Yeah. So he paid somebody to research this probably. I don't know.
Sure.
But yeah, let's see, what was it? Forbidden. See if I can find a forbidden knowledge archives at BASAC.
I know who Matt BASAC is. I don't think I remember a brother Mesmer.
Yeah. I don't know if that's a real person or if that's that's just a name.
Yeah, and I'll summarize that. There was one last point that I wanted to share, Sean, and it was being you have to be literally the people out there that are the most fanatic or absolutely fanatical about what they believe, no matter what.
Yeah.
And it's contagious. Anybody, if you're fanatical about whatever you believe, I don't care what it is, people will be attracted to that. If you're on the fence about what you believe, or if you're on the fence and you're halfway there, you're not going to gain a following. The most charismatic leaders and the most influential people out there are fanatics.
Yeah.
When it comes to their belief, they eat, drink, sleep it continually.
Yeah, and you see this on social media. The people that blow up are the ones that take a hard stand on something.
Right. Even if you don't agree with it, you're attracted to their passion. You're attracted to their fanaticism about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes you show up just to argue, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because you want to be the other side.
Right.
So, that's tough. I mean, I know for me personally, that's very tough because I can see both sides of most arguments.
Yeah.
I think part of that is just how I'm wired, but the other part is as a copywriter, I've been able to research. I've taken projects on both sides of an argument. It's even back in high school, we were sometimes you do compare and contrast, essays, and then you're asked to take the opposite side. If you've ever been in a debate class or anything like that. So I think most people are trained to kind of look for the middle.
Mm-hmm.
But our deepest desire is, I think, at the fringes.
Well, then that's why we like going back to the news outlets today. That's why they're no longer mainstream. They're no longer in the middle. They're fringe on both sides.
That's why we have Telegram groups and Facebook groups that fulfill that fringe need, that certainty, because the leaders of those groups are certain about what they believe.
That's right.
Whereas some of the other stuff, you get kind of wishy-washy. The more mainstream it gets, the more wishy-washy it gets.
Yeah.
Because they got to satisfy advertisers, viewers, all kinds of people, So it's like if you're gonna build a movement, preferably one without killing anyone. That's what we would suggest. But you still are going to have to take a strong stand, and Absolutely. It's probably going to be a little bit uncomfortable.
Yep.
And then you're also going to need a remedy or a solution that is, quote from on high, channeled, divine divinely downloaded, like that type of strength behind your idea. And that's why people that have these well formulated programs that sound really cool do so well, is because it sounds like it came from somewhere else, not from a human, right? Because
Sure.
they put so much time and effort and energy into this
Right.
thing, that it just feels like it's bigger than a person could come up with. But
Yeah.
it's not. It's just what somebody came up with.
Absolutely.
So
So if you don't want to
right.
be those personalities, then you need to build a following off of talking or being associated with those personalities.
Yeah.
Because
Or
that's what
create
Joe Rogan does, right? I mean, no one thinks that Joe Rogan's a fanatic, but he interviews fanatics.
great point.
So if you're like, you know what, I am not that kind of personality, well, maybe you need to look at your,
Be the reporter, the investigator.
yeah, be the investigative guy on that side
Right.
of things.
Which I think Brendan Burchard talked about that, 10 years ago in Experts Academy. It's like there's a couple different ways to be experts, and one is to be the interviewer.
Sure.
One's to be the guru, one's to be the interviewer.
Yeah.
So
because look at, Joe Rogan, he's got every friend you can imagine. And
and that's what he is. He's the world's best interviewer, or one of them, right?
Right.
And so he could go interview MMA people, he can go interview comics, he can go interview these fringe guys about carnivore, about mushrooms, about whatever, because he's the interview guy basically at this point.
Exactly.
Yeah. But what he is passionate about is
getting
he really wants to know.
Yeah. Understanding. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so that is his passion, is he wants to, and I think people follow that with him. So
the fun thing about that guy is he doesn't have to know everything.
Yeah.
He's just asking the questions.
Yep. That's a good place to be.
That's right.
So, and even he got into controversy. So, I mean, if you have a crowd, you're going to get into controversy.
Eventually you're going to get, but by association, you'll step into it. So,
yeah. So, all right.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah.
It's a good topic. And, of course that, again, the report that we're referencing, Forbidden Knowledge Archive by Matt Basak, there's just so much. This stuff is so heavy. We could spend a number of episodes on it. So we'll see.
It had about 3 pages of notes, but the actual document's probably, what was it, 69 pages just for this part 1.
Right.
So we barely scratched the surface.
That's right.
Dig it up if you can find it. It's worth a read if you're really into this stuff.
Which we are. That's why we do this.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, you can find us, as always, persuasionbythepint.com. You can find us over at your favorite podcast platforms, channels, Stitcher Radio, iHeart, Spotify, iTunes, you name it. And as always, thanks again. We hope to see you next week. Sean, it's been fun. Have a great weekend.
See ya.